Hello! We are gathered here today to wrap up everything I read in March and April. I feel like I had a couple of good reading months. March was my first month using the TBR wheel, so that was an interesting month. And then April, I did not use the TBR wheel because there were some new releases coming out that I knew I wanted to be able to focus on. So April, I kind of freestyled it, but overall, 2 good reading months. Let's get into it. The first book I finished in March was The Martian. This was possibly my first sci-fi novel, potentially. I had seen the movie, so I knew the premise, and I just wanted to read the book since I enjoyed the movie so much, and I liked it. It was pretty good. If you've never seen The Martian or read The Martian is about an astronaut. He was with his crew, they were on Mars doing a mission, and there was a huge storm, and so they had to like abort and leave, but he got left behind and he has to figure out how to survive on Mars, how they're gonna get him back to Earth, if they can get him back to Earth, can he survive that long, all that good stuff. That premise has always sounded interesting to me. I really enjoyed the movie, so I really wanted to read the book. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I did feel like it was extremely similar to the movie, just like with more details, which was good in the sense that I felt like I could watch the movie in my brain, but it kind of did feel slow because I knew pretty much what was happening is what happened in the movie. And I like when it's a really good book to movie adaptation, but then if you watch the movie first, it feels like the book kind of drags a little bit. That's not a criticism of the book. I really enjoyed it. It's extremely well written. It also just happened to translate very well to the big screen. It was super fun, very detailed. The only like minor flaw I felt like there was that in the book I felt like he was extremely mentally stable for what was happening to him. I felt like in the movie I felt more of the struggle he was going through, and I didn't get that as much in the book. So that was kind of not my fave. And the ending was different, which was very interesting to me. That was the big thing I didn't expect. It wasn't a crazy difference, but it was interesting that it was different. Overall, I rated The Martian 4 stars. I enjoyed it, wouldn't read it again, but I do think if you're gonna read a science fiction novel, that's a great one to start with because it's very digestible, easy to understand. The next book I finished in March was Bright Young Women, which was my book club pick for March. This is a story about a serial killer, really the serial killer's victims. So you're getting 2 POVs, someone in the present who was able to escape him and someone in the past who unfortunately did not. It was so interesting going back and forth. The first chapter was unlike any first chapter I've ever read in a book. It was wild. So freaking good. I loved that they never say who the killer is by name to take his power away. You can tell the author is critiquing the culture we have around serial killers and how they are put on this pedestal and they're publicized and they're called geniuses and they're outsmarting the police and all this stuff, and it idolizes them. When I loved what this book did, it took them down 7 notches. They made them a nobody, and I just love that aspect of it. I listened to this on audio and I felt like it really worked well with the 2 timelines. The women's voices weren't confusing me at all. I knew who was talking at all times, and it made the stories feel more personal. I definitely recommend this book. I really enjoyed it. I rated it 4.25. There was a really cool, I don't know if effect is the right word, that is used in the audiobook that gave me chills. I won't say what it is here, but if you know, you know. I definitely recommend listening to it in audiobook form. I felt like it worked so well. The next couple books I'm gonna lump together. They were kind of spread apart when I read them, but I'm just gonna include them together because they were both rereads. I reread Powerless and Reckless by Lauren Roberts. I love these books. They're on my favorite series shelf. I had so much fun rereading them. I went back through with a highlighter and highlighted all of my favorite parts, which made it like even more impactful and meaningful. Like I really read it slow and digested it, and it reinstated the fact that I absolutely adore those books. They were of course both 5 stars. And then at the same time I was reading Powerless, I did a tandem read with Powerful because their events happened at the same time, and I really thought it was amazing. I think Powerful deserved to be a full novel, and I feel like if I hadn't read it as a tandem read, I might have rated it lower, because I did end up rating it 4.5 stars. I did feel like there was some depth lacking in the characters that was more filled in by the main book, but by itself I felt like it lacked that a little bit. But I loved it. It was extremely emotional. I think reading them both at the same time made it really impactful for me, whereas if I think I just picked up Powerful, I wouldn't have been that moved by it. But it really expanded on the universe in a way I really enjoyed. And then I feel like we always assume, or at least I always assume, that novellas aren't really a necessity to read. This one, in my opinion, kind of was. Fearless ended up coming out a month later. That's why I was doing the reread. And with some of the events that took place in that book, I feel like you needed the context of Powerful to have it really hit home. Like, I feel like the people I know who've read it who didn't read Powerful were like, okay. But knowing what happens in Powerful totally changes the perspective. But anyway, really enjoyed reading Powerful. Very emotional reading that event from 4 different POVs. The next book I read was Sunrise on the Reaping. This book was so good. I love when books like take over the zeitgeist. Like, it's everywhere online. It's everywhere I look, I'm seeing Sunrise on the Reaping. People are having a Hunger Games renaissance, me included, and I'm loving it. I rated Sunrise on the Reaping 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. I think Haymitch's story was told in such a beautiful way and gave so much context to his character in the original trilogy. I think it's incredible the way she expanded on a world we already knew, giving us even more information and gives us more details about the evolution of the Hunger Games and the characters. There were so many features of other characters that I did not expect, and I did not feel like it was like cheap, like, oh my gosh, look at this person. All the people that were mentioned had a significant impact on the plot, and a lot of them did in the trilogy as well. And I thought that was really fun and surprising to read about. I think people assume that because Haymitch won his games, then it's going to be a happy story. But if you're a true fan, you know that can't possibly be true, because no one ever wins the Hunger Games. And it was traumatic. It was so sad. I literally felt like I was saying in my vlog, by the way, I vlogged reading it if you're interested. I feel like I was on chapter 5, just already being like, things just keep getting worse, and they only continued to do so. It was so heart-wrenching, but gave so much more context to the Hunger Games universe, and especially President Snow. He didn't really have like a main character vibe like he does in the original trilogy and obviously in Battle of Songbirds and Snakes, but the evilness that it expands on is absolutely wild. There is no worse villain I fear. And then lastly, the epilogue changed my life, actually. I still think about that frequently. The next book I finished is actually one I read at work for my students, and that was Judy Moody Was in a Mood. And I included it because I literally read the whole thing verbatim, so I'm gonna count it because I went through that experience. I rated it 3 stars, and obviously it's a children's book. It's not meant for grown-ups, and I try to take that into consideration, but I just felt like my students weren't all that engaged by it. They weren't bored, like totally checked out, but they certainly were not on the edge of their seats. Let's read what's happening next. They weren't having conversations about it. So at least for my students in their age group, I didn't feel like it was that enjoyable for them. They did enjoy it, but it didn't blow their minds. It wasn't a bad book, it was a fine book. Next, I finished Fearless. All hail Lauren Roberts. I loved Fearless. Also 5 stars. I told you I had a good couple of reading months. I thought this book was a fantastic addition to this trilogy. Expanded on the world tenfold. I was gagged so many times. I also did a reading vlog on this if you're interested. Holy cow, it blew my mind. It pulled in aspects from both of the other books and obviously the Powerful novella too, and just really had a little bit of everything in the best way. I know that a lot of people did not like the ending. I did. I liked it a lot. I can't say what happened without completely spoiling like the rest of the series, but I thought it was extremely fitting for that character and his arc in that book. It made sense the way it ended. I can't be more explanatory without giving things away from the other books. We just got so much lore, and I just love lore, especially when I adore the characters in the universe. We got so much more information. These characters will live in my head rent-free forever. The chapter of the like aftermath, picking up the pieces at the very end, was everything I wanted it to be. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. Kai and Peyton, I will think about you forever and ever. I love you so much. 10 out of 10 recommend. I love the Powerless series so much. I did see some critiques that there's like some questions left unanswered, but I saw in a Q&A Lauren Roberts did that she's actually intending to continue writing within this universe. So I feel like those questions will eventually be answered. I thought Fearless was amazing. I think it was an excellent end to the story. Fearless was amazing. I laughed, I cried, I was traumatized, and then everything ultimately felt right in the end in the best way it could with what happened. They picked up the pieces as best they could, and I just loved it. It blew my mind. It blew my expectations out of the water, especially with the lore. Like, I just did not expect to learn so much, and I can't wait to read more about that universe. The next book I read was possibly one of the worst, if not the worst, book I've ever read. That's kind of dramatic, but I hated it. I read The Search by Nora Roberts, which I know Nora Roberts is an extremely popular author, and I was really excited about this book, but I did not feel like this book was good. The premise was about a girl who like escaped a murderer, and she now runs a search and rescue canine unit, and the murderer that she escaped is now having similar murders to what he committed. He's in jail, but there's like copycat murders happening, and so she's trying to figure that out. And then there's also like this subplot of romance. This story felt like two separate books that were tried so hard to mesh together, and it just simply did not work. I felt like if we just threw out the whole romance aspect and beefed up the suspense a little bit more, I would have enjoyed it. Or like throughout the whole thriller aspect and leaned in on the romance, I still wouldn't have enjoyed it because I hated Simon, but at least you would have like picked one. But they were so both half-baked, I could not stand it. I loved the parts about the dogs the most. So like going with the romance, Simon was a terrible guy. I could not stand him. He was so blasé, uninterested in our main character. Like, he literally at one point says, you're not even that beautiful. I don't even know why I like you. And that's just not my cup of tea. Like, if I'm gonna read about a fictional man, he better be good, not this half-baked, half-interested loser, you know? And did he have to come after Kai Azar? Yes. But like, at least try, you know? I just could not stand him. I did not like his relationship with her. I didn't like how he treated her. I didn't like really anything about him, to be honest. And then also, I just didn't feel like the romance had development. I feel like nothing was happening, no chemistry, no tension, and then they kissed. Then there was nothing happening, then they're sleeping together. Then there was like a lot of like, I don't know what we are. Then we're like in this serious committed relationship. It just did not work for me on any level. And then the thriller aspect, there was like so much teasing and buildup, and well, really there wasn't. I felt like it was like sprinkled throughout to like keep you interested and remind you that like, oh, this is going on. But it was not really significant to the main story. There was a lot going on that had nothing to do with the whole thriller aspect of it. I felt like it could have been a really well written book with the whole canine search and rescue thing. Like, I feel like that has so much potential. I feel like it could have been so suspenseful, especially with the copycat murders, and there's this certain aspect of communication between the copycat murderer and the original, and I felt like a lot more could have been said about that. And I felt like it was treated as like a C plot when really that should have been the A plot, and it just was not working for me. And then finally everything came to a head in the last like 50, maybe even less, maybe even 40 pages. Boom, something crazy happened. The big reveal happens, and then happily ever after all in the last 50 pages. And mind you, I'm pretty sure this book was 450 or 500 pages, and so to read all of that and just to have it like feel so small in the end was just so frustrating. And I don't know, it just, nothing about it worked for me. I rated it 1.5 stars, which was because I do think the writing was good, like everything made sense, and I loved the parts about the dogs. The dogs were the highlight of this book. That's what the 1.5 stars was for. So I don't recommend reading The Search. I don't know that I'll pick up another Nora Roberts book. I just don't think that is my cup of tea. And then lastly, my last completed book was Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonham Young, which was my first book of hers. I was really excited about it because I know Out on a Limb, which I have right there and have not read yet, is really highly rated. So I was really looking forward to it. This was my book club pick for April, and it was good. I ended up rating it 4 stars. This book is about a married couple that's like fallen out of love, is not communicating well. And so they go on this retreat to like try and repair things with each other, which is actually a really interesting concept because I don't think there's a lot of romance books out there about couples who are already married and have fallen out of love in some way and are trying to fix it. So I thought that was really interesting. I also really enjoyed all of the cast, the main characters, their best friends, who they spent the retreat with. Every character felt fleshed out and real, which I really enjoy. The setting of like the camping, excursion, getaway thing, I thought was really fun. I love to hike and travel, so I just thought that was a really fun way to rekindle a relationship, I guess. The main character was very much like, this is a two-sided problem. We both need to work through things. But then also it really felt like she needed a therapist. She needed a therapist like years ago to prevent her from where she got. I guess it just kind of annoyed me that the main character kept being like, you need to fix your problems, you need to fix your problems, when it was really just about, we need to communicate about what we want, not that he necessarily had things to fix. Because honestly, there wasn't, not that any man is perfect, but like, he came pretty darn close. I feel like the book almost could have benefited from his POV and maybe his thought process. I think that would have balanced that problem a little bit more because it did feel one-sided, and it made me feel like, okay, well really, girl, you just needed a therapist like a little bit ago now. It was a fun book. I really enjoyed it. The thing that I took away the most from this book was the conversations around grief were really impactful. There's kind of flashbacks to when she was a teenager of her mom being sick, and that's the reason they got married so young, was because her mom was sick. And I felt like those were the most meaningful parts of the book. But overall, I liked it. Probably wouldn't reread it, but I would continue more books in the universe, if that makes sense. As I'm filming this, I'm currently at the very end of April. So technically it's not quite over. So I wanted to share with you what I'm currently reading. I'm currently reading Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. And I think I'm about 150 pages in so far, and I am enjoying it. The first probably 100 pages, I was a little bit unsure of the male main character. He was really getting on my nerves. I just felt like he very much looked at women in a very sexual manner and like didn't really perceive them as a person. It just gave me the ick a little bit. And then he's having all this like interpersonal conflict, trauma, healing journey, which like, okay, maybe that's why you're being a jerk, but I just felt like kind of disconnected because now that he's like forming relationships and healing a little bit, he's acting a lot better. But that also makes me feel like he doesn't respect women unless he gets to know them, and that is gross. So I don't know, I'm enjoying him now. I was not enjoying him the first 100 pages. I'm interested to see where it goes. It's about this like rich horse riding farm. They like train the horses for races, and the business is like in scandal, and so he hires this girl to train this untrainable horse, and guess what, she's amazing and she trains the horse, and so like a relationship blossoms between the two of them. I do like that they like have this like chemistry back and forth of like being enemies, but his enemies at first and her enemies at first just feel a little different. Now I feel like we're on the same page, but it took a little bit. But anyway, overall I'm enjoying it. You'll probably see in my May wrap up what my final thoughts are about it. And that is it for my March and April wrap up. I felt like I had some good books. Fearless and Sunrise on the Reaping definitely come to the forefront of mind when I'm thinking of what I enjoyed the most this month. They're the ones I think about pretty much every day still, which I already knew. I feel like I knew I was gonna love those books. I was already thinking about Peyton and Kai on a regular basis, and I already think about Katniss and Peeta on a regular basis. Not that they were in Sunrise on the Reaping, but just getting more info about it, I just loved. So those were definitely, I think, the highlights of this chunk of the year. And the low light was The Search. 0 out of 10, don't recommend. So anyways, that's it for my wrap up, and I will see you next time.